Live from New Jersey. I'm still in Jersey. This is Spirit Matters. Welcome to the show, everybody. Your daily Bhakti Center podcast. I'm Dal Grunga, here with my co-host, Kishore Chandra, holding it down in New York City. Chittagopi is not able to be with us this morning. It's Friday, Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving here in America. Hare Krishna. Welcome. We are gonna just do a quick short little episode today because we all got to run out and hit the stores before all the sales end. I think the sales started this morning at midnight, and we got to get those, extra discount on whatever it is that we think we need. So aside from that, what's going on, Kishore?
Not much. This has been a weird week. I feel like Thanksgiving is always like, it feels like a Sunday, or maybe it's Saturday, but it's actually Friday. It's very confusing. But
It's
I'm happy.
Friday, everybody.
It's Friday. It's actually Friday. But I was at my family's house yesterday and it was sweet. It was nice.
How was family?
Family was good. Family was good. Yeah.
That's good, because it's not always good.
No, it's not always good. It was so funny. I remember I was like walking into my brother's and we were outside and my aunt was there who I hadn't seen in a while. And I thought like nobody could see me. And I just stopped and I went like this. I was like, like that. And then my aunt saw me and she's like, what, are you like taking like a meditative breath before you walk in? And I was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. So, but it was surprisingly fine. It was good.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
How about
Wonderful.
you? How was your New Jersey time?
I'm in Jersey. I'm with Rasika's mom. We're with her dad on Wednesday, pre-Thanksgiving gathering in Jersey at her dad's house. And then today we're at her mom's house. So that was yesterday. And then here we are today. And then we have a friend's wedding over the weekend. So we're coming back into the city and doing that all weekend. And then it'll be Monday. Cyber Monday, by the way, not just any Monday, but a Cyber Monday.
We do have a friend's wedding over the weekend, and it's like a whole weekend affair.
Whole weekend affair. Yep. All right. So shall we talk about something spiritual?
Let's talk about something spiritual. We're in the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, which is of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is kind of interesting because it's kind of like a summary verse of everything we've just covered. There's 72 verses in this second chapter. So it's a long chapter. Is it the longest? Is it longer than
second to longest? Chapter 18 is the longest.
18 is the longest.
This is the second to longest because it's the second chapter.
There you go. So it's the second to longest. So we spent like a good amount of time on the second chapter, but this verse 72 is it's interesting because it's kind of a summarizer.
It's kind of like, and that's the chapter, folks.
And then it's also like a precursor. It gives a little like tidbit to the future of like, So I'll read it.
Read it.
It says, that is the way of the
that meaning everything we've just discussed.
Everything that we've just discussed, these past 71 verses.
Everything that you missed.
That is the way of the spiritual and godly life.
Not this, but that.
Yeah, not this, but that, everything.
That over there.
So that is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a person is not bewildered. I really like that. Then here's the little precursor. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God.
All righty. Good to know. Put that in my little back pocket. Even if one is thus situated. Should we dive into this or move on? Should we recap? I guess we can't just move on to the next chapter, can we?
Can't move on to the next chapter. I think it's really...
I feel like Achita's going to want to go back. She's going to be like, this was my favorite verse.
I think it's really interesting just because, like, just a very short recap of what we've been hearing here in the second chapter is Krishna has been kind of like giving Arjuna different viewpoints and different answers and different teachings, because he was bewildered. Like he was bewildered upon seeing the fact that he had to fight some of his family members. And
He was also going to Thanksgiving.
and as the Chuta so rightly always mentions, it's like he logically knew that he had to do all of that. Like he already knew that. They were like on the precipice of having to fight this battle. It wasn't anything new to him. But then kind of like right at the right at the moment and seeing it with his eyes, then he had kind of like this about face moment, where he told Krishna essentially that he wasn't going to fight. So Krishna is presenting him with like these various different, he's explaining to him the nature of the soul. He's speaking to him about dharma and about his duty as a warrior. He starts speaking to him about a little bit of karma, like a precursor to what we're going to cover in chapter 3. And then what we've just been covering in these past, like, I don't know, 15, 20 verses or something like that, is that Krishna is speaking about like this person, what this person who is situated in transcendence, or who is Krishna conscious. And Arjuna starts to ask Krishna about like, well, what is this person like? How do they act in the world? How do they sit? How do they walk? How do they talk, etc.? And Krishna is giving many, many, many answers. And what I really like about this last verse is that Krishna is saying, okay, I've explained it all to you. That is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. And I like that he says that after attaining this, a person is not bewildered. And I really like that language that Krishna uses, because it's like, I feel like when he says that, it's like, it's kind of like a marker of understanding how bewildered one can become. We spent a lot of time speaking about the senses and how the senses can kind of get us into trouble or take us away from our higher self. And so that word bewildered, it's like, yeah, like when we're listening to the senses, or when we're listening to the mind, we can become really bewildered when we're not situated in like a higher consciousness or a higher taste. We've heard this language come in the second chapter as well. It's like we can become really just like, whoa, just like really, really bewildered. So I like that Krishna's like, so this is the knowledge, and this is how you become not bewildered. It's like, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the little tidbit. I appreciate very much how the idea of one can enter into the kingdom of God, and the translation is Brahma Nirvanam, the spiritual kingdom, or just spiritual consciousness, and this idea of this translation of the kingdom of God or spiritual consciousness not being a physical location, but being a state of mind, state of consciousness. And Prabhupada in the commentary describes often how you can achieve that in this life, or that it's not something that you have to like die and go somewhere else to achieve. And I was thinking of this, one of my favorite singer-songwriters, musicians is Tracy Chapman. And she wrote this beautiful song called Heaven's Here on Earth. And I was looking up the lyrics, and she wrote, "You can look to the stars in search of the answers, look for God and life on distant planets. Have your faith in the ever after, while each of us holds inside the map to the labyrinth, and heaven's here on earth." And so she talks about there's this search outside of ourselves. There's this search for like into the stars and into the universe for the answers of life's greatest mysteries, and like this search for the kingdom of God, or search for heaven. But she was talking about, there's she also wrote this really beautiful song called I'm Ready to let the rivers wash over me if it's love flowing freely. And so this idea of that, like, I create my reality right here, right now. And I think, for many of us, we just talked about the holiday season and family being this wonderful, peaceful, beautiful place, or sometimes it being a war zone. And it's easy for us to think that the world around me needs to change in order for me to become peaceful. The people around me need to start acting differently in order for me to experience the state of being in order for me to be the way I want to be. And I think that what Krishna is explaining to us is that you can experience transcendence. Like, this is the key. And it's not about changing the world outside of you, it's about changing the world inside of you. And so that one can be, if one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, which is his way of saying, even at the most critical of moments, even at the most challenging of times, even when it feels like everything's being taken away from you, you can find inner connection. And so I think, especially at a time when, I remember so much of my time. One of the things, I spent a number of years in Al-Anon, which is a 12-step program for people who are suffering from the effects of having a loved one, uh, uh, suffering from alcoholism. And it oftentimes creates codependency. Codependency is built on the idea of, I need somebody to be a certain way in order for me to be happy. This idea of giving your happiness over to someone. Like, if you need somebody to quit doing something, to start doing something, to be a certain way, to give you an apology, to stop a habit, to say something to you, whatever it might be, you've literally given your happiness over to them. Like, you own my happiness and I need you to give it back to me, which is the weird thing, because it means I've actually given it to you and I'm waiting for you to give it back, as opposed to me recognizing that I can always take it back myself. I don't have to give it away to anybody. And somebody once said in the meeting that I always remember is that, because a lot of people talked about, holiday seasons are the most difficult times for people with addiction and alcoholism. It's actually one of the most challenging times for people, and where people really need meetings. And they would, it wasn't a holiday time somebody came to a meeting, but I just remember there was somebody was talking about being with his family and how difficult it was and how he would be blaming and judging, etc. And then one time he had this epiphany. He was just sitting in, and he just realized that I could still go and visit my family and everyone's still crazy and they're still drunk and they still do what they need. And I get to choose if I want to be happy in that environment or not. Like, nothing around me needs to change in order for me to be happy. And when I make that decision, I may decide that I want to change my environment. I may decide that I want to, and Christian will talk a lot about, it's so interesting. Krishna says, keep abominable distance far away from you through devotional service. And so you may need to create separation from certain things. But it kind of, it moves, it really, what I'm getting at is that it puts it, our spiritual life is always in our own hands. Our spiritual life is always in our own hands. And the minute that I think that it's in somebody else's control, and I'm just waiting for circumstances to allow me to become spiritually advanced, I've given that power away. And Krishna is urging us to take it back, because you can enter into the kingdom of God. You can achieve Brahma Nirvana. You can have, and we may not achieve this like ultimate, I'm not talking about like, you can get to where I've been and I've been there and let me tell you what it's like. Like, I haven't been to that transcendence, but I know that I can get a little bit past where I am right now. I can make a little bit of advancement, and the ball is in my court, if I want it to be.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada really clearly says in the purport, as you had already mentioned, he says there's no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord. And since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. And so I really love that, because it's like, yeah, sometimes we're so fixated on the destination and fixated on like how things are supposed to look like. This is what spiritual transcendence looks like, this is what a healthy family looks like. And if I don't have it, then whatever that means that everything sucks, and this is what it looks like. And it's like Srila Prabhupada's telling us in the purport, like, actually, like, the act of devotional service, like the act of just being, practicing bhakti, like that already is, it's kind of a hot, it's, if you think about it, it's kind of like a really far out statement. It's like, that is equivalent to entering into the kingdom of God, like practicing that bhakti and having that devotional service and having that love in your heart for Krishna and the devotees. And that is equivalent to that. And it's a really nice sentiment and a nice thing to think about, because yeah, like you said, I agree. It's like your happiness and your also spiritual progress is in your own hands, because it's like we have here a perfected, saint, Srila Prabhupada, telling us like, hey, it's the same thing, you know, and we become so fixated on like, no, but my devotional service is supposed to look like this, and my spiritual life is supposed to look like this, and my family is supposed to look like this. And if it's not like that, then that means I'm unhappy. And that means that I'm, you know, and the mind can just get so reeling, right? Like that means I'm a failure. That means no one loves me. That means this, that means that, that means whatever. And, you know, just going back to that word that Srila Prabhupada uses of bewilderment, you know, it's like that's what Arjuna asks Krishna right at the beginning. That's what he admits to Krishna right at the beginning. He says like, I am bewildered and I don't know what to do anymore, and I need you to help me. You know, I need you to tell me what to do. And it's like, it's such a nice reminder that we can always turn to Krishna, and we can always turn to Bhagavad Gita for these answers, that we are, you know, we're looking for these answers. Because sometimes when we are left to our mind tends to look for answers in very like absolutes, you know, it's either this way or it's that way. Like that's the nature of the mind. The mind is dualistic. So it's either got to be picture perfect, and my family's got to be this way, or my job's got to be this way, or it's got to be, you know, what, like this, so that I can be satisfied, which again, we're like very much in the space of the ego, so that I can be satisfied, or it's not like that and everything's terrible and whatever. And it's like, a lot of the times I have to suspend my, you know, my disbelief and just be like, maybe both can exist at the same time, you know, like maybe it can be not the way that I want it, and I can also be practicing spirituality and loving Krishna and trying my best to be like a devotee, you know, like maybe these two realities can exist at the same time. And somehow in this, you know, mishmash of realities, I can find contentment or happiness that's not come. And Krishna will talk about this a lot in the coming chapters, and he's already talked about it a little bit in this chapter too. But therefore my happiness is not coming from the results of my actions, and it's coming from something deeper. And that's such a wonderful message, I think, especially for these like real life things that we face, you know, families in the holidays, or jobs, or relationships, or, you know, things not going our way. It's like, okay, how is my inner satisfaction going to transcend the so-called happiness that comes from things going my way, or unhappiness when things don't go my way?
What's something that hasn't gone your way?
Okay.
What is some, real question, what is something that, what is an idea of life that you thought needed to be a certain way in order for you to practice spiritual life that ended up not being the case?
Spiritual life. Well, I mean, like often, I mean,
Everything? Is everything an answer? Is everything an okay answer? I'm here, aren't I? Is that not good enough? I showed up this morning, okay? I got 2 hours of sleep and I still came. Is that not enough?
I think that a lot of devotees in general have a but I'll speak about myself particularly. I think sometimes I tend to go to the romanticized version of spiritual life, to be in Vrindavan, to be in India, to be, you know, in these like extremely spiritually potent places where like spiritual life is going to be easy there. It's going to be easier than, you know, being here in New York. And so sometimes I think like, you know, when I was 21, I lived in an ashram in India. And oftentimes I go back and I'm just like, what would have happened if I just would have stayed in that ashram? Like, what would have happened? Would I have just been in the Himalayas and just like shanti shanti? Because I think that sometimes New York is such a battlefield in a sense, you know, it's such a crazy, insane, for those of you that have been to New York City, it's such a crazy, insane place where you're really confronted with a lot of Maya, or a lot of like the sufferings of the material world, let's put it that way. And so sometimes practicing spiritual life in such a crazy city, it's like, oh, like this is intense. So I think that's definitely one of the things that hasn't gone according to like maybe the way that I wanted it to go. Because I remember when I
being
left,
in New York.
yeah, when I left in the pandemic, I was like, I'm done. I remember someone asking me, who hadn't seen me in a long time, a yoga student. They were like, I thought you were done with New York. Like they literally asked me that the other day. And I was like,
What gave you that impression? That Instagram post where you said, I'm done with New York?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, I think that's very interesting, because I remember when I left New York, I was really internally like, I don't want to be here anymore. This is not good for my spiritual life. I don't see myself being a spiritualist in New York. This is too hard. And here I am. And so it's very interesting. It's very interesting for sure. I see the chat blowing up. I don't know what's happening here.
People are talking about New York. So how did you, being in New York, allow that to um what happened then? I felt like you told half the story.
Well, honestly, I think
Are you still wondering what am I doing in New York? Are you planning to leave? Are you just did you get trapped?
I think it's a day-to-day surrender, to be honest, just because I think what I constantly have to keep on going back to and constantly keep on asking myself is where is my happiness coming from? Like, where is my inner satisfaction coming from? And it's a really good spiritual practice, actually, because when I have to ask myself that, then I realize that the things that I'm quote unquote unhappy about are things that I want, like me, the ego want. And so it's really pertinent, actually, to this purport that Srila Prabhupada has written about devotional service, because I think about a lot of my life now in New York being more focused on service and being more focused on like what I can give and how I can serve. And that in and of itself is a really interesting platform to be on, because like, Srila Prabhupada is telling us here, like, devotional service is equal to entering the kingdom of God. And so it's a very fertile ground for spiritual, I would say, catalyst, because you're kind of, at least in my case, I'm kind of challenged a lot of the times of like, is this just me and my ego and what I want? Or is this, um, service and me having a moment of spiritual growth? And that is always a question I have to be asking myself. And that honestly keeps me like, okay, it's good for me to be in New York, actually, because it's kind of like rubbing against the grain a little bit. And I'm having to like ask these important questions. Whereas if I was like chilling on a beach, sipping a coconut in Brazil, I'd be like, everything's great and life is cool and whatever, it's like, there's almost like when the stakes are this high, I feel like there's almost like such a strong need to ask those questions of like, what is service, and like, why am I here, and like, what is this devotional service doing for my heart? I remember when I was living on the beach in Brazil and sipping a coconut, I remember me and my partner were kind of just like, okay, like, this is nice, like after like a couple of months we were like, this is cool, this is great. But we started to realize like, this is like, what are we doing? Like, there's no purpose. Like, we're literally just showing up to the beach every day, half practicing our spirituality, just like, hey, for the coconut, like, like this. And so it started to come to this point where we were just like, this is not, you know we got to the other end of things where it's like, this is highly materially satisfying, but internally, spiritually, we were like, this is not really like satisfying that deeper need or that deeper place of communion with Krishna or communion with the devotees. And so we started to make some changes in our life. What's going on in this chat?
New York City's high stakes.
It
Stakes
really
are
is.
high in New York.
It really is. It's so crazy. New York is crazy. I was at the Bhakti Center yesterday, in the daytime, and I walked out, and there was a homeless person on the street. I mean, there's a lot of homeless people on the streets in New York. But there was like this one particular person, and I guess maybe it was like very heightened because, it was Thanksgiving, and in Thanksgiving in New York City, the streets are like, it's like a ghost town. Like, everything was closed. I was like, okay, this is weird. And I walk out of the Bhakti Center, and like, I'm in the Bhakti Center, just like, I was having some deity seva. So I was very much like absorbed in that. And it was just like this wonderful energy. And the second I walk out of the Bhakti Center, there's this homeless person on the street, and they're just like screaming at the top of their lungs. like screaming. Like, I don't know what's going on with them. They're just like laying on the street, just like almost like crying, like wailing. And I was just like, huh, okay. Like, it was very like, it was like shocking to my system. And then I was like, okay. And then I just kept on going with my day. But it was such a interesting thing, this verse in Bhagavad Gita that we covered, verse 69, I think it is, that what is night for those that are, for the sage is darkness for those that are kind of in this material world, and vice versa. And New York is one of those places where you really feel that dichotomy or that starkness. And sometimes it's like really like nice in a sense, because there's a shelter. It's like, okay, it's extremely clear, the boundaries are extremely clear, that's over there, and I'm here in my shelter of the Bhakti Center. And sometimes it's kind of scary because you're just like, what is this crazy material world? Like, this is intense. But I was having a moment yesterday of gratitude for the Bhakti Center, because I was like, thank God, like, thank God for this shelter in this crazy city. And I also was feeling bad for that person because I didn't know what was going on, but it felt like a situation I didn't want to get involved with. But anyway, I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, no, I was asking the question. Sometimes people's suffering is beyond our capacity to alleviate. It's hard to recognize.
And that's
Hard
the
to deal
thing.
with.
Sorry, I know I've been talking a lot, and I know we're at
I
time.
know I just said I've been talking a lot, but I would like to do some more talking, please.
But that's the thing. What you said is so key. It's like sometimes people's suffering is past our capacity to alleviate. Like, that's the key. It's like, yeah, sometimes I can't control whether they will suffer or where they will be happy. And on a material level, on a purely material level, I might not even be control of my own suffering or happiness. Because like the Gita has told us, it's just up and down. So it's like the more that we can separate ourselves a little bit from that and move into that place of like higher awareness, higher consciousness, higher taste, devotional service, it's like I'm able to just see it. Like, yeah, this stuff happened, and it has the potential of making me really upset or making me really sad or making me really disappointed, or it has the potential of making me really happy and really elated and etc. and whatever. But I'm seeing how it's going. Because even I just find that even ourselves, like, what is our capacity to be in control of our material happiness or suffering? It's like, it's not that much. We're kind of at the behest of these material gunas.
We're kind of at the behest of these material goods. There was such glee on your face when you said that statement. Like you were so proud of yourself for such a statement.
I like these words.
You needed you needed a pointer and a whiteboard in front of you as you made that statement. We're at the behead with like 30 college students
Yes.
learning about Bhagavad Gita. If Kishore ever taught a Bhagavad Gita class at a university, he would at some point in there make the phrase, "We are at the behest of these gunas."
And I'd have a pointer
And he'd have a pointer and he would flip and he would be writing on the chalkboard, behest of these gunas. Any
exactly.
questions? Yes, it behooves us to understand this point. Your exam is next week. Have a great holiday season. Okay, Kimberly, what are you going to take away for us today, Kimberly, our takeawayer? What kind of takeaways we got for today?
Our spiritual life and happiness is always in our own hands. And we can take back our power and find inner connection. Heaven can be found right here on earth.
Thank you, Tracy Chapman. Heaven's on earth, and this place, material world, is a place of suffering. It's not meaning material enjoyment. It's something else. Closing word, Kishore?
I think just a closing word that, like, being at the behest of this of the material kind of the material world, it's almost like we have a choice, because and Krishna is going to go into that a lot in the 3rd and 4th chapters. It's like we have a choice of like how much we want to be at the whims of, you know, the material world. And so I think I'm walking away with that we always have a choice of how much we give in to it.
Thank you for bequeathing upon us that wisdom. Quite grateful. We need to get Kishore a crown and a scepter. Loving you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for all of our live crew. Thank you for all of our people listening out there. Hope you had a wonderful week, or if you didn't have a wonderful week, that's okay too, because we love you and we're glad that you're here and you're going to make it. You've had 100% success. You've had 100% survival rate your entire life thus far. Keep on going. We will see you next week. We're off for the weekend. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Love you.